the man who changed the world with gold. Imagine a man so wealthy that if his fortune existed today, it would surpass that of Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Bill Gates combined. A king whose riches were so vast that historians still struggle to calculate them. A ruler who traveled across continents with tens of thousands of followers, hundreds of camels, and mountains of pure gold. And wherever he went, economies changed forever. In one city, he gave away so much gold that its value collapsed for more than a decade. But his story is bigger than wealth. This is the story of African power, African knowledge, African faith, and one empire that stood as the richest civilization on earth. Long before modern banks, long before Wall Street, long before Europe entered its age of exploration, there was the Mali Empire, and at its center stood one extraordinary man. His name was Mansa Musa, the richest man in history. And this is his incredible story. What if I told you there was a man so rich that his wealth didn't just change his life? It changed the value of gold itself. A man who traveled with so much gold that entire cities suffered inflation for years after he passed through them. Not hundreds of thousands, not millions, but wealth so massive that even modern billionaires cannot be compared to him. Before modern banks existed, before stock markets, before the idea of billionaires, there was one empire in Africa that controlled unimaginable riches, the Mali Empire, and at its peak stood one ruler, Mansa Musa, the man historians call the richest human being to ever live. But here is the real question. How did one man control so much wealth, and why does most of the world still not understand his story? Chapter 1. The Golden Empire. To understand Mansa Musa, we must first understand the empire he ruled. The Mali Empire was not small or forgotten. It was one of the most powerful civilizations in world history. Stretching across West Africa, it controlled vast regions rich in gold, salt, and trade routes that connected Africa to Europe and the Middle East. At that time, gold was the most valuable resource on Earth. And Mali had more of it than almost anywhere else in the world. This is where Mansa Musa's power begins. He did not create the empire from nothing, but he inherited something even more powerful. A system of trade, knowledge, and natural resources that made his kingdom unstoppable. Caravans crossed deserts carrying salt and returning with gold. Cities like Timbuktu became centers of learning, wealth, and culture. And while Europe was still struggling through the Middle Ages, West Africa was already building universities, libraries, and advanced trade networks. This is the world Mansa Musa entered when he became emperor. Chapter 2. The Rise of a King. Mansa Musa came to power around 1312. But unlike many rulers of his time, he did not seek only war or conquest. He focused on stability, trade, and expansion of knowledge. Under his leadership, the Mali Empire became even richer and more organized. He strengthened trade routes across the Sahara Desert. He protected merchants traveling long distances. And he made Mali one of the safest and most profitable trading regions in the world. But his story does not become legendary because of administration. It becomes legendary because of one journey. A journey that would make his name immortal. His pilgrimage to Mecca. Chapter 3. The Pilgrimage that Shook the World. In the year 1324, Mansa Musa began his journey to Mecca. But this was not a simple travel. It was a royal procession unlike anything the world had ever seen. Historical accounts describe tens of thousands of people traveling with him. Soldiers, servants, officials, and scholars. And in the center of it all, gold. So much gold that it was carried by hundreds of camels. When he entered Egypt on his way to Mecca, everything changed. He gave away gold so generously that the local economy was shaken. The price of gold dropped dramatically in Cairo, and it took years for the economy to recover. Think about that. A single man's generosity was powerful enough to affect an entire nation's economy. People in the Middle East and Europe began hearing stories about this African king, a king whose wealth seemed almost impossible. But what they did not realize was something even more important. This was only a small part of his actual wealth. Chapter 4. The True Wealth of Mali. Mansa Musa's wealth was not just gold in his possession. It was control over gold production itself. The Mali Empire sat on some of the richest gold mines in the world. At its peak, historians believe Mali supplied nearly half of the old world's gold. But Mansa Musa was not only rich in material wealth. He invested in education, architecture, and culture. He built mosques that still stand today. He supported scholars, poets, and scientists. Timbuktu became one of the greatest centers of learning in the medieval world. Books were more valuable than gold in many cases. And knowledge became a form of power equal to wealth. This is the part of his story often forgotten. He was not just a king of gold. He was a king of knowledge. Chapter 5. Legacy and Mystery. After his death, the full scale of Mansa Musa's wealth was never recorded. No exact number exists. Some historians say he was the richest man in history. Others say he is beyond comparison because modern systems cannot measure his wealth properly. But one truth remains. His journey changed how the world saw Africa. For the first time in history, maps began showing West Africa not as unknown land, but as a center of wealth and power. Yet over time, his story faded from global memory. Not because it was unimportant, but because it was not widely told. Today, his legacy is being rediscovered, and with it, a reminder. Africa's history is not one of absence. It is a history of empires, knowledge, and unimaginable wealth. And at the center of it all stood one man, Mansa Musa, the richest man in history. Outro. If you think this story was powerful, wait until you discover the empires that came before and after him. Because this is only one chapter of Africa's forgotten history.